If you are a married believer trying to navigate this intimacy thing without shame, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place.
The church model, and I love Jesus and I love church, but the church model of repent from your evil sexual sin and get on with your life is not psychologically kind to how we actually function as humans. If you cannot talk about the specifics of the sexual experience out loud, you have not built enough trust to participate. Go take a pre engagement course 6 weeks before you get married. I really want to say that's too late. If you are waiting until you're engaged to have these conversations, you've waited too long. Now, give yourself permission to disassemble the way that you've been taught and rebuild a really beautiful vision moving forward that honors your faith and your values.
Welcome to the space where we tell our truth. Testimony, healing, breaking shame loose. Learning our bodies and walking by faith. Intimacy God's way, right here is the place. Sex Ed for Saints, Mondays at 6. We believe in the power of the story. Not just pain, but redemption and glory. Faith in the rhythm, hearts in the mix. Trust in educators. Mondays at 6. We're overcoming by the word of these testimonies. People getting free when we speak what's holy. Healing in our hearts, shame starts to split. Every story told, another chain gets stripped. Learning our bodies, learning His way. Intimacy and faith, walking day by day. This is where we heal, where the truth sticks. Sex Ed for Saints, Mondays at 6.
I'm so excited to finally share this book with you. Hey God, Can I is available now. Find the link in my bio to get your copy.
Hey friends, quick pause in this lesson because I need to put you onto something that has been blessing so many households. This episode has been sponsored by Covenant Eyes, the accountability app that helps you protect your eyes, your mind, and your marriage. If you're serious about keeping your digital life pure, guarded, and God-honoring, Covenant Eyes is a game changer. It helps you to stay accountable online and creates a safe space for your heart and your home. And listen, because you are a part of the Marriage Lab, you get 30 days free when you use my code MARRIAGELAB. So go ahead, take that step, cover your device.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have you all here for another episode of the Sex Ed for Saints podcast. And listen, today I am excited about the conversations that I'm going to have with my friend Bridgett. Listen, this topic is so dear to me because, when I got married, there were a lot of things showed up within my marriage that I had no clue about, right? I had no clue. And I'm just like, Bridgett, where were you before I got married? I needed you. I needed somebody to go to be able to ask the hard things and to be able to understand this thing called sexuality. And so for the topic of today, we're talking about, sex in the church and sexual formation and all of the things. And so before we get into the conversation, I do have questions from my audience that I love to ask. And so if you ever want to ask a question and myself and my guests will answer it on the show, you can go to my Instagram, the Marriage Lab LLC. In the link is, in my bio, there is a link that you can click on to ask your questions anonymously. And so for the question for today, it says, I'm single and trying to live according to my faith, but it feels like the church only talks about sex in terms of what not to do. How do I actually develop a healthy understanding of my sexuality while I am single? I love this question. Love this question. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. But Bridgett, what would you like to answer to that question?
Yeah, I think first we were sexual before we were sinful. And so we were made by God for pleasure, delight, and play. It's part of us, not just in sex, but in life. Like we were made to feel good and to want to feel good and to want to be cared for. And all of those things are really important. And so a lot of the times the things that I talk to about my clients is when we talk about sexual sin, the problem actually isn't that it's sinful. It's that it requires a separation from self and to dishonor somebody else. And so we're so programmed to go, well, sinful equals sexual. Like if it's a sexual thing, it must be sinful compared to, no, it's not the type of sexual activity that's happening. It's that it's happening at a pace that requires me to dishonor my own story, my own body, and to dishonor someone else's story. And so I think in singleness, the one of the best things that we can do is to slow down and go, oh, my body is really good. My desire is really holy.
Mhm.
And my desire for pleasure, delight, and play is good. And I don't have to stop any of those things. But because it's so good and because it's so incredible, I don't just share that flippantly. Like I do that in places that are in alignment with my values, alignment with my vision for sex, and alignment with the man or woman I want to be.
I absolutely love that. I love that because, it's this whole idea of, that self-awareness and understanding like who you are as a
Mhm.
sexual being. And as
Yeah.
long as we are human, we are sexual.
Mhm.
And to lean into that as opposed to shut it down, run away. I think it's so important to understand that side of you because it's such a big part about who you are. And
Yeah.
so, I'm excited for this conversation. But before we get into it, Bridget, you are given all the treats, all the gems already. We haven't even started yet. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Bridget. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a sexual story work coach for Christian singles and dating couples. And so that's a lot of words for what it means is that I help men and women from all over the world understand the story that they've lived from their family of origin, from their cultural context, from their church context, and how that has shaped their view of sex and sexuality within themselves and in the relationships that they pursue romantically. Um, and it is the best thing, and it keeps me up all night long. It's a thing I could talk about forever and ever and ever. I pastored for several years, and it was the thing that people kept talking to me about in secret.
Hmm.
And I had heard a sermon series. I was sitting by my friend's pool, drinking iced tea, sitting, listening to a podcast, and it was on the Song of Solomon. And I just sat there and wept. And I go, "Ooh, gosh, I will give my life to this or I'll die." Like
Hmm.
it was like, "Ooh, gosh, I've encountered Jesus and I can't go back." And so it's been this wild journey over the last 5 years in, being able to work with men and women from all over to really engage the story well and learn to have a better conversation. I would say like purity, that's not weird. We don't need to be weird
Hmm.
about this. We don't really need to do it in a way that it's a self-protection mechanism too. I think sometimes when we have really good theology about sex and sexuality, it can be a thing that keeps us disengaged from our own hearts or from our own bodies. And so I like to invite people into the deep end to say, let's sit here and figure it out together.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. See, listen, I know that, when it comes to, sexuality, it's such a big topic.
Mhm.
And one of the things that hurts my heart the most is that the way that we engage in it, right?
Yeah.
Like we treat it like it's something that it's not something that we're going to encounter
Yeah.
in such a unhealthy way. And it takes so much away from the beauty of who God is and what he
Yeah.
does and how he wants us to steward it. And,
Mhm.
I love that you brought up Songs of Solomon because, that book is so deep, it's so layered, and it
Yeah.
teaches so many valuable lessons on the love of
Mhm.
God, the love that we are
Yes.
supposed to share between, our spouses, our relationships, all of it. I think that is so good. So
Yeah.
you told me a little bit about, why you got into this business. Why do you think it's important to have this conversation within the church?
Mm. Because God's just saying really good things about it. I think that, um, you know, we talk a lot about discipleship or spiritual formation or growing in our relationship with God, but I think we neglect that. I even use the term sensuality, which I think is a little bit, it's what our sexuality fits under, the bigger box of it.
Mhm.
Um, my friend Sam Jolman, he always says, like, sensuality is all the ways you're meant to fall in love with the world. And
Mm,
so when we neglect to have these conversations in church, there's a part of our life and a part of our maturity that goes underdeveloped.
mm,
Where you can have someone that can lead all the Bible studies and do all the worship and pray the boldest, most incredible prayers. But they're not sexually formed and they're not a sexually safe lover and they're not connected to themselves.
mhm,
Um, and in that, they end up living a life that isn't in their fullness and also doesn't get to see a more beautiful picture of God.
yeah.
Um, and we just can't live our lives like that.
That's so good. That's so good. You brought up a term that a lot of people automatically associate with sex, right?
Hmm.
Sensuality. It's one of
Yeah.
those words that, we're told to stay away from.
Hmm.
Why is it
Yeah.
important to understand sensuality?
Hmm. Yeah. So sensuality is meaning of the senses.
Mhm.
And so in our Western culture, we are a very logic based society with give me the information, give me the data, give me the statistics. Um, and because we are made in the image of God, I always love to say this like, we are three in one, just like God is three in one, because we're made in his image. So if God is Father, Son, and Spirit, we are body, soul, and spirit.
Mhm.
And so there's something of sensuality in our senses that we are perceiving the world around us. It's also how we learn about God. You might even use the term discernment. Like discernment is a very sensual thing. It's
Mhm.
not a logic based of like, well, how did I know this was this person's name? Or how did I know to go to this grocery store at this time and I ended up running into this person? Like that is more of what do you feel? What do you long for? Where do you feel drawn? Um, and I think that we get really afraid of that because we think that, oh my gosh, if I'm leaning into my desire, I'm just going to be this sex crazed maniac that violates all my values.
Right.
Um, right. And again, that's a lot of us, we've been taught about that. There's a lot of religious control that we've been
Mhm.
taught about our bodies because this is church global. Immature leaders chose to control people rather than to
Mhm.
educate people.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's way messier. This is messy. Like I always, tell my clients, like, this isn't this, you take a class, you read a book, and all of a sudden you're, the most sexually mature human on the planet. This is a lifelong journey of
Mhm.
growing in maturity, just like your relationship with Jesus is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And so it's something we get to travel through our whole life with.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Because we have a lot of people talking about sex, but not in that healthy way to help
Correct.
people to understand like
Mhm.
sensuality is actually a good thing. Leaning into your senses
Yes.
is actually a good thing.
Mhm.
This is how you show up in the world, right? So I absolutely love that. So let's talk a little bit about, sexual formation and how does it happen over time?
Yeah. I think that sexual formation, so that term is the idea that sexuality is not just something that we have a sex talk and again we're great, we're done. It is a process and invitation of a lifelong journey into understanding your story more deeply. So
Mm-hmm.
to understand what was it like for me as a kid, what character did I play in my story?
Mm-hmm.
Was I um, my mother's rescuer? Was I my father's idol? um, what if we look at the real honesty of the dynamic we played, how did our world spin around and how is that impacting us? And now that's not to say that our parents are bad, right? There's a really huge fad right now and uh, let's just cut off our family, we don't need them anymore,
Mm.
to oh wait, what does it actually look like? And for some people that might be uh, necessary for physical safety and emotional safety. But there's something about growing up that invites us to say, yeah, there was a lot of dysfunction that took place in my life. And now I am going to be the chain breaker. I am going to be the legacy changer that says, yeah, this far and no further. This
Mhm.
is the way that my family has addressed conflict. This is the way that my family has done relationships. This is the way that my family has engaged in sexuality, but it is going to change with me.
Mhm.
And so, sexual formation over a lifetime, I think, number one, psychologically, our brains need to do one layer at a time.
Mhm.
And I think as we grow and mature and change, what our hearts have the capacity to look at
Mhm.
about our stories of harm changes. And so we can partner with Holy Spirit in the
Mhm.
different levels of our life to grow and do different. And um, the goal isn't that we look and go, oh my gosh, these are all the ways I messed up.
Mhm.
The goal is to say, wow, like I was a really brave kid doing the very best I could with what I had. And I
Mhm.
didn't know. And when I talk to people, when we're like, oh my gosh, I've made some sexual choices that I really am ashamed of.
Mhm.
to go, okay, I hear that. And it sounds like it's going to be a great opportunity to do different moving forward. But can
Mhm.
we bless the parts of you that was looking for a really good thing in a not so great place? But can we bless the part of you that was like, oh gosh, I wanted to belong. I wanted to be chosen. I wanted to understand more about my body. Like all
Mhm.
of those things are good. And if we jump into like repenting of those things too fast, we miss out on saying, oh, wait, there actually was a really beautiful, innocent part of me that now I want to steward differently in the
Mhm.
future.
I love that because it makes me think, during the time before I got married, I did a journey of being celibate for
Mhm.
about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of sex prior to, right? That's
Yep.
why I stopped. I was like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to give it to God. I'm going to do
Mhm.
all the things. But I just stopped.
Yep.
I didn't take the time to actually go through the healing process
Yeah.
or understand or identify or any of those things. I just kind
Mhm.
of like shut it all down. And when I'm thinking about you explain the formation, this is all a part of the storytelling, yes.
Yeah.
I realized that, prior to then I had like a lot of trauma that I had experienced. And
Yep.
so, as with someone with trauma, you do certain things, you act out, right? And
Yep.
so, you know, coming to terms with, okay, understanding that my behavior was just a response to the trauma that I
Yep.
had, right? And so, how do people like identify that? Because a lot of people they don't really understand. Like, hey, they go to church, they just stop, right? But there is this
Mhm.
like, I want to say, it's almost like a shut off, right? Like
Mhm.
they're hearing the message in church, but they're
Yeah.
hearing it from an unhealed place. Like, how
Yep.
does that land within them and
Mm.
a part of the story that they're telling?
Yeah. I would say the first question to start with is what happens for me when I hear about sex?
Mhm,
And just identify that place. Like, ooh, is it a lot of shame that pops up? Is that a lot of fear that pops up? So you can talk about the emotion part, and also kind of really dialing it down to pay attention to like, do my hands sweat? Do I feel a pit in my stomach? Do I feel like I want to run out of the room? Having just paying attention to some of those sensations. I know for me, like when I get really anxious, I have a tick with like my hand where I feel like I'll be driving in the car and my hand is like just crunched really hard. And I'm like, okay, take a breath, stretch out your fingers, to like wiggle your toes, take a breath. So I would say first, just kind of do a body scan of what happens for me when we hear about it.
mhm,
And I think having really good support. So a place like your podcast or reaching out to a coach. I always say like the goal isn't that you figure this out by yourself. I know that's a value for me is I have zero expectation or zero vision for living my life in alignment with my sexual values on my own. So I
mhm,
have friends that know and get to talk through things. I have mentors that do. I have a coach that does because this is too big. Like
mhm,
trauma is, I think it's the famous psychiatrist or psychologist Gabor Mate that says trauma is not what happens to us,
mhm,
it's what happens inside of us with the
mhm,
lack of an empathetic witness.
mm, mhm,
And so, again, the church model, and I love Jesus and I love church, but the church model of repent from your evil sexual sin and get on with your life is
mhm,
not psychologically kind to how we actually function as humans. Like, that's
mhm,
why scripture says it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance. Because there's something about when you get to sit with God and with safe witnesses to the trauma that you've experienced that
mhm,
goes, oh, wow, I actually want to do different now, not because the church is telling me to, not because I'm afraid of sinning, not because I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble, but because I'm like, wow, I'm too powerful to be living cheap anymore. I can't do that.
yeah. I love that. I love that because it brings something to awareness that you can be very practical with, you
Mhm,
know? And it gives hope
mhm,
to know that, if you do have community, if you do surround yourself with accountability, if you're
mhm.
doing all these things, that you can get through it.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. And I love that. I love that. So for someone who is coming into the space and
Mhm.
wants to decide to have conversations about it, where do they start?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to be a resource. Get to hang out with people of, hey, send an email. I have some free guidebooks that would be a really great place to start, that are on navigating value-based boundaries in dating. I have a whole guide for men that's all about men reclaiming sexual desire in a healthy way. And then I have one all about sexual joy, which I would love to, kind of tell you more about that, of how that looks. But um, I think starting small, this can be really overwhelming work of you don't have to sign up for 10 years of therapy after you listen to this podcast, of
Hmm.
saying what's one conversation I can have, what's one person I can reach out to, what's one Instagram account that I can follow, right? I would say start really, really small in taking that next step. I would love to be available for that for anyone that feels like a good fit. Um, I think I would say more about not what your next step is, but how you know it's a good next step. Is it's someone who's engaging their own sexuality well, that you feel safe and honored as a human when you're talking to them. Like if you go share something to your pastor, and I love pastors, but let's say if you go share something to your pastor and they're like, "Yes, thy sinful heathen, repent," and right, if that's their reaction, that's not going to be a safe place. So I care less about who the next step is, but that when that next step person is, and I can give you more resources too for um,
Hmm.
different resources that can be great next steps. But it's does this person engage their own sexual story?
Hmm.
Do I feel safe and honored when I learn about sex from them? Um, and are they talking about sexuality in a way that, yes, is both God honoring biblically, but also has some level of psychology awareness, clinical experience, that this is a very embodied thing. You
Hmm.
cannot talk about sexuality just from a theological perspective and not talk about it from a human perspective when you're looking for good help.
I love that. I love that because it trains us to know that no, we need to have conversations,
Yeah.
not just biblical conversations, but like we are human living in a
Mhm.
world where a lot of things are happening. And
Yeah.
so to be able to have a perspective to bring it into real time, it
Yeah.
does matter. So I love that. Um, why do you think well, I mean, I know we understand why churches talk about it, but in the way that they do, but
Mhm.
how do you get to a point where I'm trying to see how I'm trying to ask this question because I have it in my mind.
Yeah.
The way that churches talk about it, right? It's in a
Mhm.
way that is very damaging and toxic.
Mhm.
Um, I know there are a lot of pastors who watch my show, right?
Yeah.
So as it relates to the conversation, what is the message that they should be relaying to their audience on how to understand the people that they're speaking to?
Yeah. First of all, way to go, pastors. I know that life. It is so much. I would say first, remember that you're human and that your sexual story matters too. And so I would say, first of all, pastors reach out for their own coaching first. Take care of their own heart, get their own guidance, have people that speak into your sex life, have people that know the scary stories that you're afraid to say out loud, have people that are providing accountability and support for you and your heart first. I think also there's a lot of pressure on pastors to know everything about every topic in the world. In what other profession is that appropriate? That's like going to a heart surgeon and saying, "Oh, you don't know how to apply braces? You're a horrible doctor." It's
Yeah.
like you're not an orthodontist. You don't know how to do braces, right? So I would start there. I would say there are a lot of really good resources. One of my favorites is Pure Desire. It's a clinically based or biblically based and clinically informed uh, resource for unwanted sexual behavior and betrayal trauma that has church based curriculums that work with churches all over.
Mhm.
And so I would say, in a way, have some healthy outsourcing of leadership so that you don't have to carry it all by yourself.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things that I watch my pastor do um, is the way that he talks about desire and the way that he talks about our bodies in just his regular sermons.
Mhm.
I can feel this like, oh no, what is he going to say? Because I've had so many people say really gross things that my body braces. And then I hear what he says and I'm like, oh yeah. And so it's something as simple as, hey, just a reminder that like God designed our bodies for sexual desire and that's a part of our life. And that it's not that if it happens, it's what we do with it, how we store those things that really matters. Or to tell people like, your heart is really good, your body is
Mhm.
really good. And so I think it's just kind of sprinkling those things into your normal life and then asking for partnership from leaders and organizations, whether they're in your city or from somewhere else, that can help you carry the heavy lifting of people that are trained to do this, so that you're not carrying it all by yourself.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of churches, they just really go and say, hey, let's find the people in the church who have been married the longest and just
Yeah.
set them and be like, here, now you're responsible for marriage. You're
Yes.
responsible for talking about these conversations, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you're qualified, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's so healthy to have, outsources people who can come into the church and
Mhm.
teach and
Yeah.
take on that, that role, so that they're not doing it by themselves. So I appreciate what you said that. And I want to talk about, self-awareness and body and
Mhm.
things like that, as it relates to sexual formation, because, as somebody who has experienced trauma, and it doesn't even have to be trauma, but really being able to identify how to be comfortable within yourself, as a sexual being, like how does one even come to that point?
Yeah. So I love to break sexual desire down into two experiences. So one is sexual joy, and the other is sexual loneliness. And it's not that sexual joy is the good one and loneliness is the bad one. They feel a little different in your body. And so I describe sexual joy as a pushing force that moves us towards experiences of pleasure, delight, and self giving. It's that part of you that goes, I want to come closer to this person. I want to share more of my heart with them.
Mhm.
Being around them feels good,
Yeah.
right? Sexual joy can be in a yummy, attractive person, but it also can be in your favorite pair of jeans or a fresh haircut, or for women, your favorite lipstick, or men, that feeling of opening the door for a woman. And there's something about your masculinity that's like, yeah, I just, I'm a man, right?
Yeah.
So there's this spark of sexual joy that can be in all areas of life. One of the things I love to do every year, and it's not always erotic. It can be, like I said, like a pair of jeans or the new haircut, where it's not necessarily a sexual joy doesn't mean I'm looking for sexual activity with this person.
Mhm.
It's I'm feeling more connected to my sexuality as a good thing.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that I love to do is I do a Valentine's Day tree. So, after Christmas, I leave my tree up and I switch it over to a Valentine's Day tree. And it's I call it like a liturgy of longing, of, as someone who's not married yet, of saying, like, I'm going to keep my heart alive to romance, and this is the way I'm going to do it. So it's one of the ways that I I I bless and I grieve and I lament with sexual loneliness, but I also really celebrate sexual joy of, I like my life. I believe for greater levels of healing where I've experienced my own sexual pain and trauma. And so how do I look at that with a really honest vantage point? The opposite is sexual loneliness. And again, it's not the bad one, it's just the opposite force. And it's a pulling force that reminds us of our need to be seen and cared for. And
Mm.
so I give this example of whenever I have to bring groceries from the car to my kitchen, I'm like, Lord, if there was a hot and holy man to help with this, my whole life would be different, right? Like,
Right.
help a girl out. And so it's part of what is offered in marriage is this beautiful partnership, in a good marriage, right? This beautiful partnership that says, I see you and I care about you.
Mhm.
Now, just because there's sexual loneliness doesn't mean that sexual activity is going to fix it. So I always
Mhm.
love to say this a lot, is like, you can be really sexually active outside of marriage or inside of marriage, and not be a sexually connected person.
Mm-hmm.
And the inverse is also true. I do believe that God designed sex for covenant, but you can be abstinent and still live a very sexually connected life when you can dial into these sensations to go, okay, hey, I texted a girlfriend the other day to say, gosh, lots of sexual loneliness today. There's a part of my brain that says I could go on Hinge and I know that I could get some dudes to message me as a quick
Mm-hmm.
fix to the sexual loneliness. And there's a part of that that feels really good. And there's a part of that that goes, oh, girl, that's not who we want to be. But I
Yeah.
still need to move that sexual loneliness through my body.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I can share more about that because I think sexual loneliness is where people really get stuck in unwanted sexual behavior
Mm-hmm.
and where you feel like if you're not sexually active, you're missing out on life. But I actually think there's a lot of ways to move sexual loneliness through your body and honor that, even if you're not sexually active.
I love that. And I think I kind of want to lean into that because I do find that often where people feel like because they have these urges and these desires that they should lean into it in, in terms of like sexual activity. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So again, sexual loneliness is about your need to be seen and cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a healthy part of that that does move us. It's a good inspiration to pursue romantic connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't want to villainize sexual loneliness to be like, you have to be so content in God that once all of your sexual desire is gone, then you're mature. Like, no, there's a part that's like, no, that loneliness moves us towards partnership.
Mm-hmm.
I think where the loneliness can keep people small
Mm-hmm.
is when we engage how I describe it as a storyless sexual experience. So one of the things I always teach my clients in my group program is that our bodies tell our stories, and how we share our body is how we share our story.
Mm-hmm.
And so to understand that, like, you're never just sharing skin. You are always sharing a story beneath your skin. I tell this story. I have a scar on my left knee from when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, I must have been 4, 5, or 6, learning to ride a bicycle. And my birth father was a very emotionally abusive person. And I remember learning to ride my bike, and I felt so out of control of my body that every decision, I had a helmet that was like this boy helmet that I hated. I wanted my pink glitter helmet because I had a Barbie bike, and I just so desperately, like, there was so much in that dynamic that I felt like my father's assault on my femininity started really, really young. And so when I think about that memory of learning to ride my bike, it's all of this possession and control and fear and ownership. Not a dad honoring his daughter's body, but really taking possession and ownership of his daughter's body in the way that it was like, you got to wear elbow pads, you got to wear knee pads. And it wasn't coming from a place of safety. It was coming from a place of control. And so when I was little, one time I took the bike out by myself, and I wanted just my helmet. Didn't want all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I crashed my bike.
Mm-hmm.
And I skinned my knee.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, the first time I remember lying, and I'm so glad that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this place of, even though I was 5 and didn't have words, like, I needed to take ownership of my body back somehow, to say, this is my body and I get to choose how I share it, what I do with it, and that it belongs to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something of that, even if that memory isn't triggered specifically, there's something about being aware of that trauma to go, agency, freedom, conversation is really important to me when I share skin with the men that I'm dating, right? Because it's not just about sexual activity, right? This level of healing and beauty, while I do believe happens at a different level inside sexual activity and marriage, there's so much of this that happens in the sensuality of just learning more about someone else's story and being close to them in a romantic way, that is an opportunity to say, God's actually inviting me into healing, both for you and your partner,
Yeah.
that we miss when the question is simply, oh, how far is too far?
Mm-hmm.
We miss all that and we jump straight to rules compared to like, what actually honors both people? What requires both people to acknowledge the level of commitment they've made? What creates peace and safety for both people? Do both people feel like they can share honestly where they're at? Do they have mentors in their life where they can talk through things without hiding, without secrecy? To get feedback, to share the places where like, oh, this got a little awkward and I didn't know what to do, or this
Mm-hmm.
thing happened and it reminded me of a situation with my ex that was really painful and traumatic. And I know that this partner isn't that way. This person is kind and they do love me and they do respect me, but my body's still freaking out. That creates space for all of that. Um, and if we try to push past it and not sit with the loneliness, we miss hearing what it's trying to invite us into and healing in our own life.
I love this. This is so good. This is so good because even thinking about the example that you use, we are creating this sexual formation,
Mhm.
um, even as children,
Yes.
right? And that makes it such a big thing. It's a big
Yes.
deal in how we are shaping,
Mhm.
you know, what it is that we like and what it is that we don't like, and all of
Yes.
the things that we're not really even aware of what's happening in real time.
Mhm.
But it shows up later and you can go back to it and be like, no,
Yeah.
this is why I feel this way.
Yeah.
This is why I've been responding this way.
Yeah.
How far back should someone really go to be like, what is shaping my sexuality?
I think it depends on each person. I don't want people to trauma hunt.
Yeah.
Stories have a way of presenting themselves. Um, I just reconnected with my coach. I have a sexual story coach, and I told her, I was like, "Ooh, hey," I said, "in this dating experience, it brought up this old memory for me that I feel kind of stuck in. I don't really know what to do with it. Can we process through it?" And she helped me. Where I was like, I'm not really even sure why this is coming to my mind, but it is because it didn't. The memory itself wasn't super sexual. So like, what does this
Hmm.
have to do with?
Hmm.
Um, so I don't want people to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to go to every moment of trauma that's ever happened in my life. I think that working with a trained coach who can help you understand I would say the themes of your story matter more than trying to get to every single moment of trauma.
Hmm.
I would say that number 1, and then number 2, remember that this is a lifelong journey. That we're not trying to get you through a 6-week program to sexual wholeness. Like I have a program. I love programs. I've gone through a bunch myself, but it is the awareness that formation is a forever thing where there's
Yeah.
always something new to explore. Um, there's always an invitation to more healing, and I can take breaks too. I think
Hmm.
that if you have listeners that are very healing forward, they're always a person that wants to sign up for the next Bible study. They always want to listen to the podcast. There can be a grace in saying, I'm just going to take a pause for a little bit and I'm just going to
Hmm.
spend some time with God about this. And for other people, they might need more of that intentional support. But I would say more of work with a coach that can help understand the themes
Hmm.
and acknowledge that this is a lifetime journey, that we don't go get sexual help because something's wrong with us or because we're
Hmm.
bad or broken, but because we want to be the healthiest, most fully alive men and women that we can be. And we only get that way. If you want to win an Olympic medal, you're not getting there without a coach,
Right.
right? I mean, you can't really
Yeah.
just wing that. And
Hmm.
so the same way of like, wait, I want to live at the fullest, strongest, healthiest version of my sexuality. And to
Hmm.
do that well, I need partnership and doing it with a friend or a mentor.
I love that because this thing is a journey. It's not something
Mhm.
that happens overnight. What would you say to that single Christian who feels like this conversation about sex doesn't really apply to them?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I have been loving the work of Jay Stringer. His original work is around unwanted sexual behavior, and he just wrote a beautiful book all about desire, not just sexual desire, but desire in all areas of our life. And when he talks about sex, one of the things that he says is it's designed to reveal, to provoke, and to heal. And I believe that happens within like sensuality and longing. Like there's something of that, like, will you risk? I think grieving is really important. So will you risk the way that you've known sexual harm, the way that you have longed for love and romance that you haven't seen evident in your life, in the places where you've participated in things that violate your values? Like, will you actually sit with God and safe people and go, this is so sad. Like, this is breaking my heart. And it feels so big and so horrible and so painful. And let that be part of the story too.
Yeah.
I think, I always say sexual trust is not something that is built on your wedding night. Like, that has to be built beforehand. And so as a single person, the best thing that you can do to be a deliciously safe lover in marriage is to work on your own story and own self, become really educated, finding really good sexual education resources where you're learning about your body and about the body, right? If you're a woman, you're learning about healthy women bodies and healthy male bodies. If you're a man listening, learning from healthy, safe places of how your body functions and how a woman's body functions in sex. Those are all important information that as a single adult that you have the right to know. And then, like really dreaming of, what story do you want to tell with your shared skin? Like, to have it be a place that says, I want this relationship, right? If they're dating, to say, even if we marry each other or not, both of us are leaving with a kinder expression of masculinity or femininity. And both of us are leaving with the other person really, really honored sexually. Without feeling like that has to mean you have to pretend you're not attracted to them, right? I think there's a lot of fear around purity culture of you're going to use it all up for your spouse. Like, if you're too sexual, your spouse is going to have nothing left. You're just a rose, whatever those horrible teachings are. To go, no, like, I've missed it. Shoot, I've super missed it in my story. There's been so much pain here. But now that I know different, I get to do different. And so I can engage a place that goes, I'm a little more healthy, I'm a little more healed, they're a little more healthy, they're a little more healed. Even if we don't marry each other, but if we do marry each other, we've already set the foundation for a really safe and connected sex life moving forward.
I love that. I love that. You said something very important. You said trust, right?
Yes.
And how does someone who is single understand what trust looks like? How can they trust themselves?
Yeah. So I always say that God designed our body to know what trust feels like. And the reason why we know this is true is if you and I were to have lunch today and we were to go through Target afterwards, and I said, hey, Tammy, can I have your credit card? There'd be something in your body that goes, I think Bridget's kind of cool, but I just met her, and letting her go into the store with my credit card, that doesn't feel right. Right? Now, if your husband says, right? If your husband said, hey, babe, can I have the card? I got to go get something to do this lawn project or whatever, right? You'd be like, oh, yeah, of course. Because there is trust built there. And so how to know, I say what it feels like is that sensation of, am I at a place where I am ready to share or am I not? The example that I always give is there was this time several years ago when I first moved to Nashville that I was just trying to get my sea legs in the dating scene. And so I'm like, great, I'm going to just go on a bunch of dates and see what happens. And I didn't date till much later in my life, not from I had to thing, just from my story and my trauma. Like, I didn't necessarily feel safe to date until later in life. And so I was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to get my numbers up. Let's see how this goes. And I had kind of laid the softball to the guy. It was like, hey, if you're paying for coffee, I'd love to see you this weekend. And so after that, at first the conversation was okay. And then after that moment, he started sending me really, really long text messages. Like you
Mm,
had to scroll a couple times. And my belly sunk of like,
mhm.
oh, no, this does not feel right.
Yeah.
So I called a girlfriend and I'm like, oh gosh. For me, what happens in my head is like, oh, I don't want to be too judgmental. Am I just being judgmental? But again, there was something of my discernment that's like, something about this feels funny.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. I am so pro men. I do a Good Men Monday. I love men. The world is better with men. I think that men are designed by God to be good and safe lovers. I abandon all of the toxic garbage that men are just sexual idiots. I do not believe that about men.
Right.
But there was something in me that was like, something about this situation feels weird. And so I remember I sent him a text back. It was really brave. I sweat through my shirt. Felt like I was going to puke. I was so scared to say what I needed to say. And I just said, hey, I said, because of the intensity of your text messages, I'm feeling a little concerned that our expectations about our coffee date are not aligned. Can you tell me more about what's happening from your end so I don't make an assumption about you that's not true? Right?
Mhm.
I'm just like, oh, hey, I'm feeling a little flooded over here. I want to know what's happening for you. And Tammy, girl, I got back the longest message of, you're not even coming to my city to date me. You're coming to date other guys. You're the
Oh,
one that
wow.
said that you wanted authenticity, blah, 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 blah. And I just was like, oh.
Wow.
And I simply responded back. I said, thank you so much for the information. We obviously have very different communication styles. I'm no
Mhm.
longer interested in our date.
Wow.
And one of the things that I tell specifically women, I think it goes both ways, is the best thing that happens in dating when something feels off to you and you bring that up to a man, the best thing that can happen, like it did for me, is I protect myself from a situation that isn't safe because there's something in me that feels funny.
Mhm.
Now, the worst thing that could have happened in that situation is this could have been a very precious man that was so
Mhm.
excited to go on a date with me
Mhm.
because he knew my friend or something. And he was just like, oh my gosh, I've just heard so much about you. I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you for telling me your boundary on the texting. I can't wait to see you on Saturday.
Mhm.
Now, if he would have said that to me,
Mhm.
everything in my body would have opened up sexually. Again, not that I was pursuing sexual activity on this date,
Mhm.
but I would have had so much heart capacity to flirt and to be
Yeah.
cutesy and to show up with my heart fully alive. Because
Mhm.
the third option is I could have said nothing and I could have just let the long text messages keep happening, even though there was something in my gut that felt off.
Mhm.
And either I would have shown up on the date, even if he was a safe guy, where I would have been shut down the whole time.
Mhm.
He would have been like, what's wrong with this woman? She's not even talking to me. She's not asking questions. Because inside, I'm in fight or flight the whole time. Or, I mean, from the communication that I got, I actually don't know that I physically would have been safe.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that if something in that conversation would have happened in person where I disagreed with him, from the way that he responded to me, I could see that there could have been something. And
Mhm.
so the trust piece is going with your gut and presenting your concerns as curiosity to invite the other, and that's for men or women, and
Mhm.
leaving your concerns as curiosity, not judgments, and watching how someone responds to you. If someone's like, oh my gosh, totally missed that. Like, I totally hear that that's your boundary. Thank you. Then you guys move on and it can be a healthy connection. But if they're like, I can't believe you would say that, you're making a big deal out about it, these text messages aren't a big deal, then you know
Mhm.
that you are relating to someone that's not a safe person.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because you have to be able to say
Yes.
what you feel
Mhm.
because it's your intuition and it's another way that God is communicating with you something.
Yes.
And if you're not paying attention to that, then you are essentially not even going to trust yourself.
Correct.
Yeah. So I
Mhm.
love that. I love that.
Mhm.
So for somebody who is dating,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about this,
Yeah.
like, how do they stay in touch with their sensuality and all the
Mhm.
things in spaces where they are dating?
Yeah. as far as self-trust or in
Yeah.
engaging in like sensual
Activity.
connection with a
Yeah,
person.
sexual connection.
Yeah. I would say my golden rule, I only have one rule for this, is that if you cannot talk about the specifics of the sexual experience out loud, you have
Mhm.
not built enough trust to participate.
Mm.
So if you've got hands in places and you're doing all sorts of yummy things, but those words aren't coming out of your mouth, there is not enough maturity or safety to participate.
Mm.
Um, I think the other thing is always having conversations before a new level of physical intimacy is introduced.
Mm.
Some people give me pushback on that, but I'm like, I've never seen it. The only time I've ever seen boundaries violated is when there wasn't clear communication. So that's not like you pull out a contract and you go, we've been on 6 dates and I would like to kiss you now, right? It's not weird like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But to say, I only can speak to my personal boundary. For me, I have found that kissing is something that I reserve for an exclusive relationship.
Mhm.
And so I think there can be a cultural difference in that, where I'm not gonna put a moral judgment of if someone they are fine with a quick kiss on the first date or whatever. I'm not gonna say that that's wrong for everybody. I'm gonna say for my story, what feels best to me is that kissing is in an exclusive relationship.
Mhm.
And so I just have that to say, oh, hey, like I have had so much fun. Maybe I'm a couple dates in and I go, oh, I've had so much joy getting to know you. I can't wait to get to
Mhm.
know you more. I definitely feel a little flustered with just, how attractive you are and this
Mhm.
good connection we have. I wanted to share with you so it doesn't feel like I'm being standoffish, that for me, it's a really important value that kissing is something that is reserved for a committed relationship. And
Mhm.
so as we continue to have more of those conversations, for me, the physical boundary is that, we can sit close to one another and I'm fine with a hug, but I'm actually not comfortable with more than that right now. I would
Mhm.
say that kind of in that first level. When you're in that committed relationship, and they are hot and holy, right? And they're so
Yeah.
yummy, and your body's like, I want to do yummy things.
Uh-huh.
Um, for me, I found it really successful in my own dating life and with the clients I work with, is getting used to communicating sexual joy without fearing that it automatically has to jump to an
Mhm.
activity.
Yeah.
So to say, oh my gosh, I feel so much sexual joy thinking about um, kissing you, blah, blah, blah. Amazing. A little bit of sad because I'm not quite ready to introduce that yet.
Mhm.
Okay, amazing. I would say this right here is probably the most damaging thing that Christian couples take into marriage and why Christians struggle so much. And I would say
Mhm.
the difference between what's being communicated sexually between a husband and wife is that what most men were taught about their sexuality is don't start something you can't finish.
Mm.
So don't get too aroused because your penis is going to fall off or you're going to go to hell or something
Right.
horrible,
Mhm.
right? And women are
Right.
taught that because that's just how God made men,
Mhm.
if you're not willing to have intercourse, do nothing. And then
Mm.
you have all these couples 10, 15 years into marriage, and they are starved for sexual connection because
Mhm.
the only thing that's allowed is if I tap your butt, if we have a little makeout session, if I say something sexy about you, if you see me getting out of the shower, that all of a sudden has to mean moving into sexual activity. And I think it's the most harmful. I could get, ooh, Tammy, I get excited about this one. Like I think
Right.
it's the most important thing that happens in marriages is will they keep romance alive in all the fun parts of sensuality and
Mhm.
not making sexual activity as the highest pinnacle, is saying it's an expression of our sexual connection and our romance and our love for one another, but it's not the only expression of our connection to one another.
I love that because there is this disconnect in
Mhm.
marriages. And so, like, how important is it to have these conversations prior to marriage so that you're not disconnected?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that the typical model is go take a pre-engagement course 6 weeks before you get married. I really wanna say that's too late. If you are waiting until you're engaged to have these conversations, you've waited too long. Now, again, we don't know what we don't know. So if that's your story and you're like, oh no, we didn't know, it's okay. Do the best with what we got. But if you're in a situation where you are single, you are dating, to say that it is a normal part of two healthy adults that want to build a relationally safe and sexually secure relationship, that we would have mentorship, that we would be learning, that this would be an important part of conversation throughout the relationship. Again, whether you marry them or not. Now, I'm not going to suggest that when you're dating, you're going to go through all the specifics of sex positions that you want to start,
Right.
but there's a difference between that and, so for example, if a man notices that when he moves towards the woman he's dating and he feels her body tense up, of like, oh gosh, every time I go near her, what's happening? He could just say nothing and then they say disconnected. But he could say, oh, hey, babe, I have a little bit of fear bringing this up. I notice sometimes when I come to put my arm around you in the kitchen, or when I reach over and hold your hand in the car, I feel your body kind of brace. What's happening for that?
Mm-hmm.
And she's able to go, oh gosh, yeah, there's a part of my story that with a man initiating connection to me has flooded my nervous system with a lot of harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to say, okay, like, well, what do we need to do to create safety where your body can, what I call, create a pure body memory that
Mm-hmm.
says this man is for me and he is safe. And so both people can talk about that. And again, bring in people. I do not, it is the value of my life and I will do this forever.
Mm-hmm.
I do not navigate these conversations by myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is the core in my friend group, whether married or single,
Mm-hmm.
that we can talk about the places where we get triggered by our sexual trauma, how that shows up in the relationships that we're in, and how we need healing. Like, those conversations are always on the table. Even though they're uncomfortable, you're going to sweat through your shirt sometimes and you're going to feel a lot of shame. But to say, I have the right to have these conversations because it matters for both of us is really important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You have to really be comfortable with the person that you're with and have a willingness to be able to have those hard conversations. And that's just what it is. Have the hard conversations about what makes you feel uncomfortable. And that, again, like you mentioned, it builds that trust so that they can open up fully.
Yeah.
How did you get so good at this?
Lots and lots and lots of research. research and engaging my own story. Like, I did a certification program for sexual story a couple years, like 2 years ago. And Tammy, it was horrible. I hated it. I was miserable. I was like, this is stupid. I hate this. I don't ever want to do this ever again. And then 6 months later, I was like, oh, that was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I think about honoring our discernment. And, I think about the couple or, man or woman who's listening. It's like, okay, do I feel insecure to tell my partner because it's weird to talk about? Or is there something in me that knows that when I bring up this conversation, they will not be kind and safe? That's really important information to be honest about. Because if the fear is, if I bring these conversations up to my partner, they will belittle me, they will dismiss me, they will gaslight me. That is a much bigger conversation that, again, when we try to just avoid everything and pretend, oh, we're just going to turn around, we're not married, none of this is happening, we lose out on the safety and healing that can be important for us to discern. Because we might be in a dating relationship where we go, this person is not a sexually safe person to be in a relationship with.
Yeah.
As we've gotten to know each other, they're not willing to take responsibility of their porn use. They're not willing to own the places of trauma in their life. They're not willing, when I've presented them the opportunity to, and you will not get that information if you shut it all off.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. You've talked a little bit about your sexual story. What is your sexual story?
Yeah. So for me, grew up in a faith-aware home, but not a faith-practicing home. And
Mhm.
so it wasn't until my mom was divorced when I was really little, and it wasn't until my mom was remarried and I started attending a youth group that I really started having some of those conversations. But a lot
Mhm.
of it was this really intense purity culture of like men and women can't be friends on Facebook because they're going to have an affair.
Mm.
And, women can't wear tank tops and everything had to be just, there was so much fear around my body that, again, like I said, I didn't date until after I was in college. When I was in college, I had a mentor, Sarah, who's changed my life. And I was in a women's program that we had a crossing over ceremony at the end. And she invited me to we all got to wear gowns and it was beautiful. And we went to the
Mhm.
mall and I was trying on dresses and she put me in there was lots of glory being revealed.
Mhm.
And I panicked of oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I'm doing something so sinfully bad that my body looks good in this dress.
Mhm.
And it was just this invitation to go, okay, what have you learned about your body?
Mhm.
And there was something of, I remember I had this encounter with the Lord and he said, you've used purity as a weapon against men instead of as an invitation into holiness. And that's not what I created your sexuality for.
Wow.
And so it was this just divine reckoning of I did all the things, I checked all the boxes, and God's really not pleased.
Yeah.
God is
Yeah.
super not pleased. And not in
Yeah.
a disappointing way, but in a girl, I made you for so much more than this. And
Mhm.
so really took that seriously and have loved big and had my heart broken several times along this journey and have had just so many great experiences with dudes and had some
Mhm.
painful experiences with men. And as I keep my heart alive to a lifetime lover, and now like I said, I get the awesome opportunity to work with men and women literally all over the world in my one-on-one coaching and group programs to help people engage their stories too.
I love that. I love that. It's that going through that whole process of understanding even the fears that you have around sexuality, all the things. I absolutely love that story. And so I usually go into, this hot round where it's like fun, quick, reflective type of questions. And so I'll go ahead and read them and then we can go with that. So one myth about sexuality you wish the church would stop repeating.
Yeah, I think the idea that um, God just made men to be sexually uncontrollable,
Hmm.
that is horribly dehumanizing to men
Hmm.
and very unsafe for women. To
Hmm.
teach that and to believe that about male sexuality is really harmful. And so my friend Sam Jolman talks about that men at the core of their hearts are lovers.
Hmm.
And they were wired for strength and romance and love just like women. It shows itself in different ways, but to say that men are sexually aggressive and
Hmm.
consumptive by nature is
Yeah.
gross.
I love that because it's true. Like
Yeah.
we're taught that men are supposed to just be these active sexual beings. That's just their
Yeah.
job is just go 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 go. But we're taught the opposite as being
Mhm.
a female, right? So I love
Mhm.
that. What's one truth about sexuality you wish people understood more?
Mm, yeah. Purity is really yummy. There's and whether that's purity in abstinence before marriage or that is doing the heart work in marriage to live a pure, connected, deeply delicious sexual
Mhm.
experience with your spouse.
Yeah.
Um, there's something about it that puts the world in color
Mhm.
to say, wow, I'm really incredible. My lover is really incredible. And look at this beautiful world that God made. Um, that purity isn't, I would say specifically, we're talking about abstinence for singles. It isn't this grin and bear it, God's a prude, save, preventing me from having sex. But
Mhm.
there's this deeply beautiful gift of engaging a life of honor that will just change your whole life.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I love that. Okay, so the next one is one word that describes healthy sexual formation.
Mhm. Can I give you two?
Of course.
um, It's honoring and it's honest.
Mm.
So one of the things I love about scripture is God is never trying to protect his reputation by withholding the information about real stories. So when we look at especially the Old Testament, right? Like let's just take like Abraham and Sarah. He sought after a slave woman
Mhm.
to assault why we have Isaac.
Mhm.
God's not sugarcoating that. And
Mhm.
he's also saying, look at the faith of Abraham and Sarah.
Mhm.
And I think there's so much in our own sexual story that we try to sterilize to be like, oh, nope. But to actually go, no, like there's some really messed up crap in my story. And at the same time, there's a lot of beauty in me that's just trying to
Mhm.
figure it out and honor God. And so
Mhm.
I think we have to do both. We have to engage our stories with a lot of honor that said,
Mhm.
I was doing the very best I could with what I had at the time, that my
Mhm.
parents were doing the very best that they could, that my community, my pastors were doing the very best they could, but also honesty to go, I am
Mhm.
really impacted by the harm that was done to me. And it's okay for me to be honest about that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Um, and what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Mm. Date more. um, yeah, I think that's a good question. I would say date more in the sense of doesn't have to be so high stakes
Mhm.
that I don't have to have an angel fall out of heaven to affirm this is my husband before I go to coffee.
Mm.
Um, and to enjoy, there's something of risk and romance and learning that you only actually do in relationship that you can't like you can read 1,000 books and have all the certifications, but there's some of this that you only work out when you risk your heart in real relationship.
Mhm.
And that can be dating can be a really beautiful path of sexual discipleship if we
Mhm.
do it with integrity.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. We could be here all day talking
Yeah.
about this. I know we've been here for over an hour. And so I want to know if someone is listening today and they still feel confused about their sexuality, their faith, and, their formation, what would you want them to remember?
Yeah. I think give yourself permission to be curious and to question.
Yeah.
I had a client recently that came and they were just like, I don't really know what I believe, and I don't even know if this is all worth it, but like, what have you got to say? And I
Mhm.
was so honored I was just so honored by their honesty. I was like, thank you for being honest, because I think there's a part that like give yourself permission to disassemble the way that you've been taught and rebuild a really beautiful vision moving forward that honors your faith and your values, but
Mhm.
also allows you to be human.
Yeah.
That we don't have to pick between humanity and holiness. Like they're part of being embodied being. Um, and so yeah, I think give yourself permission to question. Give
Mhm.
yourself permission to go, I actually don't like this. I don't want to learn this. I don't want to learn from this person.
Yeah.
Um, and give yourself, permission. I always say that like God's narrative of love is bigger and better than my lived experience.
Mm.
And there's something of that that's really painful. And there's
Mhm.
something of that that's really inviting to go, oh God, but there's a vision of sexuality that you have that I haven't quite caught on yet. Would you teach me what that is?
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Bridget, it has been such a pleasure having you
Mm,
on. Um, there's so much wisdom. I don't even know if people really understand the depth of what was said today because
mm,
it's so layered, it's so deep, but it's all so good. And I think this is one of those episodes where they might have to, listen to it once or
yeah.
twice because it's
That.
it's filled with so much and
Mm.
you really want to be able to connect to it. But again, where can people reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a joy to be with you. Thank you for the trailblazing work you're doing to have healthier, safer, more embodied conversations for sexuality for your podcast and for your community. And I just honor the risk that you've taken to engage your story well to give this gift to others. It's such a delight to be with
Thank
your
you.
crew today. For me, the best way is bridgettblood.com. On there, you can find a connection to my podcast, Dating and Desire. I do with a dating coach friend of mine that's all about sexual formation for singles and dating couples specifically. Also, there's links to connect with my group program. I lead it every couple months. My next one will be in May. It's a virtual 8 to 10 week, depending on the season, program for adult Christian men and women that want to engage this kind of deep dive in. And then I also do my one-on-one coaching as well. And then I can make sure that your listeners have the link to my free resource, Value-Based Boundaries and Dating Guide. That will be a really great short workbook that they can either print it out or keep it on, digital, that will have really great questions for them to talk about with their partner, or good questions to think through for when they do participate in a dating relationship, to kind of set the stage to build that healthy relationship.
I love that. And I'll make sure to put the links at the bottom of this episode. And I love the dating guide, because I think a lot of times when individuals go into dating, they really don't pre-think about the questions that they should be
Yeah.
asking. And so I think that that's a very valuable tool for someone to
Mm.
have. And so I just want to thank you again for coming on today and just sharing so
Mm.
much wisdom around this topic. I absolutely love connecting with
Mm.
other people who are in this field, because there's
Yeah.
not a lot out here who are actually
I
doing it in
know.
a God-filled way. And so
Yeah.
we need more. We need more to have more conversations like these,
Mhm.
because you guys matter, and you guys are struggling with these things, and you
Yeah.
feel like you don't have anywhere to go. And so we are bringing resources to you to know that, you don't have to be like how I was, right? Discovering these
Mhm.
things in marriage, not knowing
Yeah.
where to go to, not understanding sexuality God's way and his design.
Mm.
And so I think conversations like this are very important to have. And so, make sure you tune in again, watch it again, because it's so layered, it's so deep. But I want to thank you again for tuning in. If you have enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, I'm going to say bye. All right.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Now, friends, if this conversation blessed you, do me a favor. Take a moment to leave a review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, because you already know we need more faith-filled, real conversations like this in the world. And listen, I know you heard a gem today, something that made you pause, something that made you think, something that made you say, woo, this was for me. But friend, it might not be just for you. So go ahead and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend, a spouse, a sister in Christ, somebody who's been feeling stuck or silent in this area. Let's spread healing, freedom, and truth, one conversation at a time. And until next time, we're going to get candid, but keep it God. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
This the space where hearts get free, learning our bodies with holy therapy. God wrote desire with love in the mix. Sex ed for